Most people move through history the way they move through a museum, glancing at the surface, never noticing the symbols carved into the shadows. And one of those symbols is a word almost no one recognizes: Totenkopf. A word that feels cold even before you understand it. A word that carries the weight of centuries, etched into uniforms, flags, and the darker corners of human ambition. Totenkopf means death's head. But it was never just a skull. It was a message, a declaration that fear itself could be weaponized, a reminder that some forces in history didn't just fight battles, they cultivated terror as a philosophy. Most people think symbols are harmless, but symbols are operating systems. They shape identity, loyalty, obedience. They turn ordinary men into instruments of something far larger than themselves. And the Totenkopf wasn't born in the 20th century. Its roots reach back through Prussian militarism, through ancient emblems of mortality, through the universal truth that humans have always been fascinated by death and terrified of what it demands. History doesn't repeat itself, it echoes. And the Totenkopf is one of those echoes, a whisper from the past, reminding us that darkness doesn't disappear, it evolves. By the end of this story, you won't just know the word, you'll understand why it mattered and why it still does. Most people move through history the way they move through a museum, glancing at the surface, never noticing the symbols carved into the shadows. And one of those symbols is a word almost no one recognizes: Totenkopf, a cold whisper from another age, etched into uniforms, flags, and the darker corners of human ambition. But while the Totenkopf was carved in the open, other forces shaped the world from behind closed doors. Not through armies, but through ideas, networks, and the slow engineering of belief. People hear the word Freemasons and imagine handshakes, aprons, old rituals. But symbols are never what they seem. They are interfaces, gateways into systems designed to operate quietly, patiently, strategically. For centuries, groups like the Freemasons have woven themselves into the fabric of society, governments, banks, media, cultural institutions. Not as villains in a story, but as architects of influence, shaping narratives, alliances, and the flow of power. And the truth is this: every era has its hidden operators. Every civilization has its custodians of knowledge. Every empire has its silent engineers. But secrecy creates shadows, and in shadows, myths grow. Some see these networks as protectors of ancient wisdom. Others see them as manipulators of destiny. Most people never look closely enough to decide. History is full of groups that tried to steer the world. Religious orders, political elites, financial dynasties. Some succeeded. Some collapsed under the weight of their own ambition. But all of them understood one thing: controlling a society is not about force, it is about narrative. The stories people believe, the symbols they trust, the institutions they obey. And when those stories are shaped behind the scenes, the line between truth and influence becomes almost impossible to see. We are not here to judge these networks. We are here to understand the pattern, the way power hides in plain sight, the way history is edited by the hands that write it, and the way every generation inherits a world shaped by decisions it never witnessed. Because the deeper you go into history, the more you realize the real battles were never fought on the surface. They were fought in the shadows. And those shadows lead us to the next chapter, a moment when the hidden world collided with the streets of Paris. Shadows don't just shape secret rooms and hidden networks. Sometimes they spill into the streets, loud, violent, undeniable. Paris learned this in 1944. Rare footage captures it now, but back then, it wasn't history. It was survival. The Forces Françaises de l'Intérieur weren't symbols or theories. They were people, ordinary citizens who decided that occupation had lasted long enough. Urban combat is different from war on open fields. Streets become corridors. Windows become rifles. Every corner becomes a question of life or death. And in those days of August, Paris was a maze of resistance, fire, and desperate hope. When General Leclerc's armored division entered the city, it wasn't just tanks rolling in. It was the return of breath to a city that had been holding it for 4 years. Every engine rumble felt like a heartbeat restarting. Every liberated street felt like a memory being restored. And when the German garrison finally surrendered on August 25th, the city didn't just celebrate freedom. It remembered what oppression feels like. It remembered how fragile liberty is. It remembered that history is written not only by hidden hands, but by the people who refuse to disappear. But even victories leave questions behind. And the next chapter takes us to one of those questions, a mystery that echoes through time, carried by the sound of bells that vanished without explanation. History doesn't always hide its secrets in symbols or shadows. Sometimes it hides them in sound, or rather, in the absence of it. In 1914, as the world braced for a war unlike anything it had seen before, something strange happened. Quietly, almost invisibly, bells began to disappear. Church bells, town hall bells, public bells that had marked time, celebration, mourning, and memory for generations. Removed. Melted down, they said. Requisitioned for the war effort, they claimed. But here's the part history whispers instead of explaining. Many of those bells were never used, never forged into weapons, never returned to their towers. They simply vanished. And when something vanishes in history, it leaves behind a silence louder than any sound. People accepted the official explanation: metal shortages, logistics, chaos of war. But the pattern doesn't quite fit. Too many bells, too many regions, too many records that contradict each other. Some historians believe it was bureaucracy. Others think it was mismanagement. But there's another possibility, one that sits in the same category as every unsolved chapter of the past. History remembers what happened. It rarely remembers why. The missing bells became a symbol of that uncertainty, a reminder that even in the modern age, the truth can slip through the cracks of time. And maybe that's the real story here, not the bells themselves, but the way history leaves us with questions instead of answers, the way every era has mysteries that refuse to resolve, the way silence can be more revealing than noise. Because when you listen closely, you realize something unsettling. The world is full of events we think we understand, until we look again. And sometimes, all it takes to break the illusion is a single missing sound. You be the judge. If you're awake, you already know what to do. Support the movement. Show where you stand. Your voice matters. Your choice shapes what comes next.